You either need to make someone money or save them money. That's your only value in this world.
Right. Are we just in another cycle, or is there something deeper this time with AI?
Why does the average person, why should they care? Why does society care about these things?
What did you have to do to overcome any fears of becoming an investor? What was that like?
You can't buy wisdom. You can't use AI for wisdom.
What do you tell a kid? What do you tell them about how to balance this idea of ambition, but meaning and working hard? Welcome back to Mork Unfiltered, folks, the show where we dive into the messy middle of success, the setbacks, the failures, the divorces, the health scares nobody talks about on the road to quote-unquote success. I'm your host, Patrick Mork, and today I'm joined by a rare voice in the Valley who's been behind the curtain and some of the front lines. Someone I've known for over 15 years, hard to believe that, since my earliest days at GetJar and at Google, and who has really seen it all. Vijay Chattha is the founder and general partner of VSC Ventures, a venture capital firm that grew out of 15 plus years of work helping over 500 startups get their story straight and speak and break through the noise, which is quite tough in a place which is like saturated with noise all the time. Before launching his fund, Vijay founded VSC PR, one of Silicon Valley's most storied and respected PR firms, a shop that helped launch 22 unicorns, saw 46 exits, and played a part in 3 IPOs. But Vijay is more than just a VC and a storyteller, folks. He's also a musician, the lead singer in Black Mahal, a 10-piece Punjabi funk hip-hop band. And he's also the co-founder of Project Ahimsa, a nonprofit that brought music education to more than 10,000 kids from around the world. Today with Vijay, we're going to go deep into some of the contradictions of Silicon Valley, the rise and fall of cultures, the myth of founder worship, the true cost of artificial intelligence, and what we're really supposed to tell our kids about the future. This one's not just for founders. It's for parents, it's for creators, and it's for anyone wondering what the hell comes next and where are we going as a species. Vijay, welcome to Mork Unfiltered, man.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. It's been awesome to reconnect after so many years.
My God, man, it feels like 20 years. I mean, it's unbelievable. And you know, I'm always mind blown how you haven't changed, man. You look like exactly the same as the person that I knew like 15, 20 years ago. You've aged incredibly well, man, which is much more than I could say for me. I got all this gray hair. You're perfect, man.
It's
it's good to have you, man.
I have good genes, man. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
You do, man. That and a good stylist, man. You have really good genes. But Vijay, I mean, you know, you've been in the Valley for a long time now. You have seen it all, the coming goings of rockstar founders, rockstar companies, mobile, the internet, now AI. You know, one of the things that you and I were talking about last time we met was, what's happening to Silicon Valley culture. And so I wanted to start us off a little bit on that. Because Silicon Valley culture, at least from my perspective on the outside, seems to be changing a little bit. And I wanted to get a little bit your perspective for our viewers here today. You know, it felt like when you and I talked, you were saying that kind of like we've gone from, this focus on DEI to like a whiplash to bro culture, right? It's back to the good old or not so good old days of bro culture. What do you think's changed with AI and in the last year or two?
Yeah, it's a big question, Patrick. So I don't know if there's like a simple answer, but I'd say first thing I would say is there is a generational shift happening with the AI movement. There's a lot of young founders are in the city and in the Bay Area. People are starting companies out of high school. The idea of dropping out of Stanford or other schools is not crazy. It's almost like a business plan strategy now or a narrative. You're seeing still a lot of momentum for things like Y Combinator. Andreessen has something called Speedrun. There's other accelerators that are driving flow of founders into Silicon Valley. So first of all, it's like there's definitely a youthful generation that's come through post-pandemic. And it's interesting because that's how I came into the city. In 2002, it was post-dot-com bust. And there was just new flow of energy of founders that came in at that time. They were doing mobile. And it's almost, there's a similar path because that time everything was down. Prices were down. You could get a condo cheap, all those things. That was basically here.
Those were the days, man.
Those are the days, man. You could get your, Aeron share on Craigslist.
Seriously.
That wasn't that different than 2022, right? Or some of this post-pandemic years here. So San Francisco is cyclical, is the first thing I'd say, in the Bay Area. Number two, there's a young generation that's coming in with new ideas. I would also say the younger generation is also still, it's actually skewing more conservative politically, and are not as necessarily bought in with some of the Silicon Valley cultural shifts before it.
Right.
And then certainly you've seen with the last presidential election that there is more of a cultural shift. I'll tell you the biggest thing for me, Patrick, was I remember the day Trump won in the first time he went around, and there were people crying. There was like sadness in San Francisco for like weeks.
Yeah.
It was like a war that something happened.
Yeah. Like somebody had died. Yeah.
Somebody had died. And then this time, last November, I walked into one of the biggest tech workspaces, Shack 15. People were smiling, having fun, talking about their businesses. Like nothing had ever happened. Actually, like a weight was taken off people's shoulders. And when I mean people, I mean young people, people of color, different types of people. It was different. And I was a bit shocked, honestly, to see that. And I saw maybe like one person sad in the corner, right? Like some of the old SF looking kind of energy. But I was surprised because that was my own eyes looking at something and saying, how do people really feel? Right. And at least in the technology world. And so that's for real. People feel like there's been a bit of a weight lifted off their shoulder. I think part of it's also that this administration is very pro tech, pro AI, deregulation, pro crypto. And this is what the people are that are starting companies. So, I mean, why wouldn't they be excited at this point?
Yeah. Yeah. Understandable. And it's like, things seem to swing from one extreme to another, right? Because I mean, the bro culture of Silicon Valley is not something that's new, right? Back in the days of Travis Kalanick and all those guys, we had a bro culture going back on in those days, right? I think probably some of the thing that might worry people is, the not so good side of bro culture, right? There are things about it that are good, and then there are things about it that are less good. So, when we look at, for example, something you and I talked about, in our last quick call together as well, which is the resurgence of the 996 culture. And for those people who don't know what that means, 996 refers to working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, which obviously by any standard is pretty intense. That seems to be becoming normalized with startups chasing AI glory. And I was wondering, what's the risk here in your eyes when, you couple that with the rising levels of anxiety and depression that we're seeing, especially across young people in this country?
Yeah. Well, look, let's start with a couple things. One, bro culture, it's definitely back. You see it everywhere so blatantly now. Like you could go to a conference and every panelist is a guy, right? You could see we could watch a tech show and it's all men for hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the reversion has been extremely crisp and there's no half stepping in terms of that, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between sort of male dominated culture and bro culture, right? So I think you're seeing, I just think you're seeing a difference. There's an older generation of men also who want to hang out with men, and you can see this even in just content and all kinds of worlds. But there's also young people that are doing things differently, and so I just would say I agree with you. This is what's happened, and there will be a pendulum shift back, right? I think there is certainly a massive group of powerful and ambitious women in technology who feel slighted right now and feel like their voice isn't heard and they're not getting funded. The funding rates are like extremely low, certainly follow on capital. And that is going to swing back, I believe, but it sometimes takes egregious behavior to do so. And that's just a timing thing. I mean, honestly, it's like greed. Things always kind of flip. I think the 996 thing you're mentioning, I think it's basically a short-term trend. I don't think it's going to be sustainable. And I think it sounded good on social media, but I don't know how many people are really going to commit to that. I see people out in San Francisco. I see them at events networking. I don't know if networking events considered as part of the 996 culture.
Good question. Yeah,
like,
good question.
To a part, sharing your LinkedIn, working. I don't know. You know what I do notice though, what's sad is like a lack of nightlife among this younger San Francisco group of people is they actually just they're not going out as much and as often as like our generation maybe, but that's just globally, like alcohol consumption's down.
Yep.
People are addicted to their screens, man. Like it's It's just a thing. But
I
it's
know, man. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, I'm saying it sucks. I mean, you and I know that's what this feels like. We're from the older guard, but it sucks when
Yeah.
you go into a downtown city on like a Friday night and it's empty. That's just
Yeah.
sad for any city. So I think this 996 thing is a short term thing. I think extremes are always the things that gets covered on social media.
Yeah.
Like
Very
people
true.
being moderate or doing moderate stuff is just not going to make headlines.
It's just boring.
Boring.
It's true, man. But I mean, it worries me because it's like I coach a bunch of founders, as you know. I was I was in a coaching session with one of the founders that I work with in a very respected AI startup the other day, and I was like, man, when you're not working, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm sleeping because he's like working 6 days a week. And I as his advisor, as his mentor, my job is to kind of like push him and challenge him on things. Right. And I'm like, well, think of the analogy as think of your life like as a temple, right? So supported by all these different pillars. If your pillar or your pillars is basically work and money, and one of those cracks, like what happens to the temple? And that's what worries me about this generation is that there's like, I'm not saying there should be balance, right? And anybody who's been successful in a startup will tell you, well, the first couple of years you can't have balance because if you have balance, you can't be successful. And you can argue or disagree with that, but I understand it. But my point is kind of like, I worry very much that, the as a VC, this better than I do, of all the investments that you make, kind of 80% don't make it, maybe 10% break even and 10% return the fund. By default, that means that a lot of these startups are not going to make it. And what's that going to mean for the state of mind and the levels of anxiety and depression for all those people who don't make it, right? They have nothing else. So that kind of worries me in terms of the trend, but I don't know, maybe I'm just worrying for no reason, but I do think about that quite a bit.
Yeah, look, I think there's a confluence of like things that can create anxiety right now if you're a young person.
Mm-hmm.
One of
Yeah.
them is also AI taking everyone's jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in on the advisory committee of AI for our kids' high school, and there's definitely a concern of like, what are the jobs going to be in the future, and is current education system set up to prepare those kids? I generally believe that AI will create new jobs, and we don't know all of the jobs yet, but there certainly are
Yeah.
jobs. I mean, I'll tell you right now, like podcasting is a job in demand. Creating
Let's go.
content, job in demand.
Yeah.
Content creators are paid very well.
Yep.
Convincing somebody that just left college to do that, maybe that's not how they think because it's reframing. But then again, you look at the early data of teenagers and you say, what do you want to do with your life? Number one job is I want to be a YouTube creator. So
is it really? Is that the number one job? Wow, that's amazing.
it's number one. So I do think that there are going to be new jobs, but currently there's a doomerism that's going around what will be available to them. By the way, I think there's also a doomerism among people our age, founders I know saying, hey, man, I need to sell my company this year. I want to sell it by next year. I want to get out before there's nothing left to get. I need to get the bag. Again, these are cycles. There's always going to be innovation. But I think that this AI thing is certainly like a double-edged sword in terms of the energy it's brought. And that's different, Patrick, than the mobile era that we were part of, which was like, nobody felt disrupted by mobile. They felt like it was going to open up all these new revenue streams.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't a zero-sum game. I think that AI has a feeling like it could have a zero-sum game, which is job loss. You kind of wonder who to believe right now, right? Do we believe the AI leaders who tell us everything's going to be okay, or which are also selling tenders at like hundreds of billions of dollars to get some money, get the bag themselves? Should we believe the doomers who don't really build AI and know what's going to happen next? And do we believe the government that doesn't release jobs data for the last couple months?
Or do we believe that the government that doesn't necessarily always tell us what we need to know in general, right? I mean, it's hard to know.
Right. And so you're seeing Jerome Powell go out and talk about, well, looks like we're getting productivity gains, but we're not maybe seeing employment update, growth. So there's a lot that people are thinking about right now. And it's not as like linearly up and to the right as mobile was.
Exactly.
And that's right. And that's also part of, I think, not just technology, but politics, society, is it feels like a more Hunger Games mentality sometimes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Not
ask
healthy.
you. That's what I was going to ask you, Vijay. I mean, it's just like, you were alluding it to her earlier, but is it really a cycle? Are we just in another cycle, or is there something deeper this time with AI? Because, your comment that you just made is very interesting, right? Which is, in previous technology cycles, you don't get this feeling that it's a winner take all. You do get a feeling that a lot more people can participate. But this is kind of like, I keep hearing the words like a jobless recovery, right? Or jobless economic growth. And so, in a state where it's a fact that jobs are getting eliminated, right? We're starting to see it, universities having more issues getting their recent graduates placed in jobs. I went to a top business school, and I heard from people on the board that it's harder for those graduates now to get jobs coming out of a good business school. So those things are very real. And so although we're seeing productivity gains and people doing a lot more with AI, there's no doubt about that. We're also starting to see job loss, and we're starting to see like a whole layer of jobs potentially disappear. I mean, McKinsey and BCG, they used to hire, I don't know, call it 30 or 40 out of a class of 500 at my business school. Maybe they hired 3 last quarter, right? Those are real numbers. So where does that take us?
Well, look, I think there's 3 job opportunities. If I were a young person, I would look at the 3 areas of growth. One is AI native. So the current class of college grads, and maybe the one before and the one before that, are not AI native necessarily. They didn't grow up with
Right.
ChatGPT. They're learning
Right.
it. Maybe they're college bandit. Like, they don't have the tools coming out right now to be
Right.
amazingly productive for the company that's going to hire them. Right.
Right.
And I always tell my nephews and nieces, like, you either need to make someone money or save them money. That's your only
Mm-hmm.
value in this
Right.
world. So AI native probably can do both, but that's like, there's actually high schoolers now that are AI native. They're
Yeah, it's
not in
crazy.
the market yet. And if they do, they may do it on their own. They may not even need college. So that's a big opportunity. I tell everyone I know, learn the vibe coding tools, start putting out content. So that's the second job. I think content creators is going to be
Yeah.
booming. It is booming right now. As
Yeah.
traditional media is waning, more voices, more information. People are getting more content from niche places. That's a
Yeah.
great job. To me, that's a booming area. And then the third one is blue collar jobs. We are
Mm-hmm.
desperately in need of electricians and HVAC installation people, and so many jobs in construction. By the way, even with these immigration changes, there's a lot less people able to do construction projects here. So I
Yep.
heard from the LA Olympics that they lost about 30% of their workforce due to these ice raids, to build for the Olympics, which is coming up.
That's
So
crazy.
these are 3 really positive places I would guide people to go into new job territory. But the problem that you're mentioning is that there's a lot of still people in the system of like traditional white collar job training. And those first jobs are coming out trying to make a PowerPoint, right? Or write a report, which obviously ChatGPT can do now in a couple minutes.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. What are your thoughts about older people? What recommendations or thoughts would you give for somebody that's maybe in their, mid 40s or going on 50s that is, seeing all these changes happen? And, what's the risk of those levels of jobs going away? Right. And what should a person do about that?
It's, I feel like ageism is the thing that nobody talks about in business and in
So true.
technology. And it's the great discriminator
Yep.
right now. And it always has been, honestly, in many businesses, whether you look at media
Yeah.
or even art or you know, culture related industries, but certainly technology. Uh, I think it's almost I would look at almost the same framework, Patrick, which is one, older people have more experience. They should turn the
Yep.
camera and launch a TikTok and an Instagram and start monetizing their expertise while they have it.
Yep.
You can't buy wisdom. You can't use AI for wisdom. Number 2, I would say that just really reinventing themselves using AI tools is the big
Hmm.
thing. Like, my wife has really gotten excited about using a lot of these AI tools. She meets with a lot of parents at our kids' school and stuff, and she's surprised at how many professional executives still don't know how to do a lot of stuff with AI. Like, they
Yeah.
may use basic ChatGPT functions. They don't know about Sora. They don't know about Midjourney. They don't know about Google VO. So I think it's a lot of it is always that you have to retool.
Yeah.
By the way, one of the ones that is the most at risk is being an older person in marketing
My
because
God. So true.
right because marketing tactics only last a generation and then they die.
Yep.
So if you leave the workforce, which happens with maternity leave, paternity leave, other leaves of absences, whatever you decide, career change, you leave the world of marketing for a couple of years, you're like, come in looking like you were from the Stone Ages.
Totally. That's so true. And that actually segues to something really nice that I wanted to ask you about, seeing as, in your PR firm, that's really what you focused on for such a long time, right? Which is the power of storytelling. And so, albeit I agree with you on this idea that, marketing changes very quickly, and that if you're out of marketing for a couple of years, you're like prehistory, right? But one thing that doesn't necessarily ever seem to change, and I hear this from investors all the time, is how much technology people sometimes struggle to tell a good story. Like, I don't know the number of freaking technical founders that I have worked with that are incapable of articulating the story behind the problem that they're trying to fix or the purpose of their company. Tell us a little bit, in the new age of artificial intelligence, what is artificial intelligence and AI tools? What does that do for marketers and potentially for founders from the point of view of storytelling? How does it enhance it or impact it?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, the reason why I found success was that I decided to match my interests in like storytelling and understanding mainstream audiences. I grew up in West Virginia. Like I was not like a coastal person. So I had to think about how regular people ingest and learn about things. I matched that with Silicon Valley. It was a perfect match for me because it's the exact opposite skill set a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Not that they aren't
exactly.
from a lot of the middle of America or other countries, but they get stuck in a jargonic like cycle of words
Totally.
that nobody fucking understands.
And nobody cares, right? It's like they're
And
talking
nobody
about
cares.
LLMs and MSCs, and like people are just, dude, explain to me what you're doing in plain language.
Yeah. And we have like a messaging like workshop experience. And one of the little categories we always ask people is, okay, now that you told me what you do, and now you told me why it's unique, make me care. Right. Like, and this is what I learned from Bill Ryan. He's like an early advisor to Steve Jobs, and he launched Yahoo and all this stuff. And he's like, why do I care? Make the average person care now about your thing. Why? And so this is like a struggle for people. They're like, I just told you that this is what my product does. Okay, I get it, but why does the average person, why should they care? Why does society care about this thing? And then you're like, okay, well, here's my cybersecurity thing. It works this way. It stops AI agents from doing it. So why does my grandmother care?
Exactly.
Well, I guess she should care because there's going to be AI spam calls, and seniors are the ones that lose the most money from those calls. So if we can block those calls, then your grandmother can afford to give you a Christmas gift. You know what I'm saying? Like, bring it back.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would say that the more the technology goes, Patrick, the more it's important for people to know frameworks of awareness and marketing. It's like the classics, right? It's like Greek mythology. Like you need to know things like when everybody zigs, I zag, right?
Exactly.
Right. You got to know when everybody's going offline. We need to go online. If everyone's online, we go offline. That is like classic framework thinking. Maybe it's more contrarians. Contrarians do really well, by the way, in storytelling in Silicon Valley. Think of some of the people that you see that are getting the most attention. Some of them had training and coaching. Some of them literally just think differently. And their mind is trained to say, if everything's this way, the only way I'm going to get attention is if I think that way. Right. Or the right way to build business. And by the way, in the cancel culture era, those people were branded as racists and misogynists and Nazis and whatever you want to call it. But then now you're like, wait, maybe they had an idea that it was just so anti the system that people were always meaning it. And so I think one thing that we're trying to like look at more is, this is a question we asked founders. What is a truth that you believe in that most people do not believe?
Yeah, that's like the Peter Thiel question, right? I think Peter Thiel asks everybody that he's going to invest in, he asks that question. That's a great question.
Yeah. The other thing I would say about Silicon Valley is a lot of the culture is driven by engineers, right? It's technology experts, geniuses, 1%ers who were probably not the most popular people in high school. They probably didn't run the cheer squad. That they weren't.
They weren't class president.
They weren't the most communicative, but they were beautiful minds. And so that is always going to be a thing here where many of them don't want to ever do anything public. And they actually don't like when we come in and say, hey, we need you to do more founder-led comms. We need you to have more videos and podcasts. They're like, I hate it. I'll do it, but I hate it. Right.
So
And
true.
there is a big chunk of Silicon Valley, Patrick, that no matter what you propose to them, like the people making stuff are like, I know I have to do it, but I really hate it.
Yeah.
And those people are, it represents the biggest part of the GDP here, frankly. And what the only way to convince them to change their opinion is two ways. One, they do something and it works because they're engineers. They see how things work. They're like, okay,
Yep.
did X and I got Y, I'll keep doing it. Or the biggest one is their competitor does it.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny you mentioned that, Vijay, because, I was talking to a founder, who runs one of the biggest EV charging startups in Europe, right? And these guys raised like 150 million euros this year to expand their footprint. And one of the things that he told me that was very interesting is he's a technical founder. He's an introvert. And for years, he would never speak in public. Like he wouldn't, talk in the stand-ups, he wouldn't talk to press, whatever. And then finally, he got some coaching, and through the coaching process, his coach kind of like took him back to like his childhood and his early years. And one of the things that they unpacked was that his father, because it was French, had always told him, shut up, don't speak up, when the adults in the room are talking. Nobody really cares about your opinion. You're the most junior person in this room. So he had grown up with a psychological hangup about talking in public. It wasn't that he couldn't. It's that he had a limiting belief that he shouldn't do it, that he wasn't smart enough, that nobody really cared, etc., that it wasn't expressive, right? And then all of a sudden, kind of like once he had that insight and he started slowly to speak up in meetings and he started slowly to take on smaller interviews and podcasts. He was actually on my podcast. He got over that. And it turns out that even though he's an introvert, even though he's highly technical, he is a very good speaker. Like he's very convincing, very articulate. So, sometimes I always ask myself when I'm working with founders, it's like, how much of what you believe is a limiting belief? How much of it comes from some situation in your past where you had a negative experience and you just shut down and said, I'm never going to do this again. I don't want to do marketing. I'm not going to talk to press. I'm not going to speak up in a meeting, because you do see that sometimes.
Oh man, it's PTSD of marketing is just everything. Like I would say like 80% of the clients that come to us say, hey, honestly, my last PR firm sucked. Like, I don't know if I want to do this again. You know what I mean? It's like a bad relationship. It's like, I don't want to date again.
Ugly bright.
It's all of them, right? And so the answer is yes. On top of that, there's all these cultural things, right? Some cultures like India, it's a memorization culture of education.
Exactly.
Right. And the best thing that's happened for Indian entrepreneurs is to see other faces now out there, like Satya Nadella or the CEO of Adobe or Sundar Pichai. They're seeing people like themselves, technical people. And I mean, I think Satya is a product marketer, but Sundar is a technical person. Actually be good at driving the stock price through communications, right? And this wasn't always the case, but when you start to see people like you, or even in your vertical, do it, then it really motivates you to figure out how to do it yourself. It's very rare to be the first one in your vertical to do it. But we always find that if a second-time founder or third-time founder enters into a new market they've never done, they often do quite well because they know a playbook of go-to-market or strategy.
Exactly.
And they can almost bring a consumerized approach to a B2B world. Like I would say Stuart at Slack did an excellent job at this, where from Flickr, he knew how to communicate to people in a way that engaged them. He applied it to an enterprise world. He made it consumer-y, and he had an extremely viral product with 20 competitors that were not, right?
Yeah.
And so applying that to these AI companies is going to be important. The other thing I would say is also like, let's not forget these founders that raised money in 2020, 2021. They went through a really terrible downturn of 2022, 2023, where there's no money. And then a lot of VCs are, talk behind closed doors and say, you know what? Next time, I don't know if I want to back such a scientific founder. I need to back a person who's commercial too, who can sell when there's no money out there, right? Who can raise around in the worst times. And right now we're in an absolute boom where like, it seems like anybody can raise money, but we actually have to remember that like storytelling will help you through the worst times, not just the best times. And
I think you raised an excellent point there, Vijay. I think people forget that storytelling is not just for pitching, right? It's like every time you're recruiting, you're storytelling. Every time you're messaging on a crisis, you're storytelling. Every time you're trying to convince your team that you need to make a pivot, you're storytelling. Every time you're talking to your wife about why you're not going to make it home to dinner again, holy shit, you're storytelling, right? So it's like, it is a vital skill. And if you think about it, right, this is the way that we pass down knowledge for thousands of years before the printing press, right? This is like, it's as old as humanity is. And so to me, it continues to blow my mind how many people gloss over this and are just like, oh yeah, I'll just give that to some junior comms person on my marketing team. Right? It continues to sadden me that people don't get it. And I continue to hear from VCs and from others that, when you have a technical founder who on top of it can storytell, or a technical founder who has a good co-founder who can storytell, right? Or who invests in PR. I mean, I remember in the early days when you and I met, man, we were like 30 guys. Nobody had ever heard of us. Excel had given us like whatever, $6 million. And we were able through storytelling and good PR to create a story that seemed so much bigger than the company was. And I remember, meeting the guys at Yahoo once at a conference, and they're like, how many people are in your marketing team? You guys must have like 30 or 40 people. And I would laugh because I was like, we were like 4 and we had like 2 interns or something. But we were so prolific in terms of content generation, putting out data points, creating like data-driven stories, coming up with great PR and great stories about how we were like the independent app store that was, giving Google and Apple a run for their money, that people love to cover that stuff. Like people just love the story, right? So it's an underappreciated skill is what I find. It seems like that hasn't changed.
I think it's become more important. And now with direct communication, storytellers can be unleashed. You can see founders post dozens of times a day if they're interested in doing so. Just 2 things I want to share on the storytelling part. One is the most impressive storytellers at the tech companies that you're seeing now, they are basically full-time storytellers.
Give me an example. Like, who comes to mind that you think this guy or this woman is an amazing storyteller?
Well, the one thing that was interesting to learn was that Palmer Luckey from Anduril, who's an amazing storyteller, he is not really fully, I don't think he's the CEO anymore. I think he's basically just storytelling. He is the ambassador now, right? I think, look at even Sam Altman. I know he's involved with a lot of the company, but at least 50% of his time is storytelling.
Yeah.
And all these groups, maybe more. I would maybe 100%. You're finding that the great companies realize that they need their PR person is the CEO, right? Their PR guy is the CEO, or a gal is the CEO. And if you think you can outsource it, you're wrong. You should have all the best people around you anyway, but you are the brand. And by the way, Patrick, the new thing is it matters even more in B2B now.
Yeah.
Where the
Absolutely.
brand of the founder or the CEO is the cult of the brand. And I've had very trusted clients and founders and LPs in our fund say, hey man, I have to be on Twitter because enterprise decision makers are following me and they like what I put out more than the press releases, right?
Yep.
And there was a mythology that B2B didn't need as much founder-led comms. It's like, oh, that's for consumer. Like our product will be good enough, or Gartner's going to talk about us. But it's changed. And it's like the B2B founder is realizing they need to be as good, if not better, than a consumer founder. And like, honestly, you hear a lot less about the CEO from Oura Ring than you do about like, Snowflake now, right? Like Oura Ring sells itself, right? It's the product.
Yeah.
But software, it's all like kind of the same. I don't even know what some of the software looks like. I couldn't tell you.
No, I agree. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. No, man, storytelling is fascinating, and I think, I loved it, man. I spent, the better part of 20 years as a storyteller, and startups and at Google, as you know. And, what I continue to do now is help founders tell stories and continue to tell stories on my own. I mean, this podcast is all about, having people like you on the show and talking about your stories, right? So I wanted to switch tack a little bit because, one of the things that we're exploring a lot on this show is what I call the messy middle of success, right? And as we see people like you and me and younger sometimes or older who are starting to think about, what's the next chapter in my life, like professionally? What's now that AI is coming? Should I be thinking about pivoting? Should I be thinking about a new career? Where do I go from here? And so a lot of people are kind of like exploring what's next. Some people have been let go, right? We've seen a fair amount of layoffs in Silicon Valley. And I get pings from people all the time who are like, I spent 15 years at Google, or I spent 10 years at Microsoft. what do I do now? And so, when I look at your career, you've done a lot of different things. Your career has been anything but linear in many ways. Tell us something like, what was a bet that you made over the course of your career that really didn't pan out as you thought it would? And what did you learn from that?
Man, so many. Okay. So one thing I did in 2013, we had a company come to us, two guys who wanted to launch a little tracker. Okay. It's called Tile. And they said, we need to blow this thing up. How would you recommend we do it? We want to crowdfund it. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, people love stories of successful crowdfunding more than they love what the thing was. And they're like, okay, so what do you recommend? I was like, what if we actually launch this, but we say that the goal is $20,000, right? But then let's hit it. Let's crush it like really fast. They're like, dude, $20,000? That doesn't even pay your retainer. I was like, I know. But if you make the number too high, then it's going to take forever to get there. And like, by then you'll already made it, but like, that's not exciting. So, they're like, all right, fine, let's do that. And then the second thing, it's a long story, Patrick. I'll get to the problems in the story later, but I'll tell you the successes first. So we made a short-term goal. The second thing we did was, this is the beginning of Facebook ads. Okay. So this team, those guys started running ads, and some of the ads actually had press coverage in them that we got.
Okay.
So one, they hit the goal. Two, we started telling everybody that we're over 2x, 3x oversubscribed. We started putting that in the Facebook ads. It felt like a phenomena. Most people didn't even know what an ad was yet. So they just thought everybody was talking about Tile. Okay. Then something else happened, which is we pitched all these journalists. Some of them, like a few of them wrote, a lot of them inbounded us. They're like, hey, are you representing Tile? Like this thing's everywhere now. Like it's this runaway success. I'm like, well, yes, we are. And then the press drove even more coverage. And then this thing like killed it. It became a very successful brand. Like a lot of people have Tile. But then we were like, you know what? We should create a PR business just for crowdfunding stuff and hardware companies.
Okay.
So then I launched this thing called Awareness, like hardware meets awareness, called it Awareness. Right. That was cute. That's
cute. I like that.
We took money from our agency and we invested in something. We cut checks into them. And we had a pretty decent run. We had Osmo, which got acquired.
Nanit. Yeah, I remember those guys.
Yeah. Nanit Baby Monitor's #1 smart video baby camera. Tonal, which is still around, strength training, and well, a lot of failures too. But the problem was at some point, crowdfunding became not cool, right? People stopped, they had fatigue, products were shipped late, delays.
Yeah.
Our most famous one was never really shipped. It was called Coin. It was the smart credit card.
I don't remember those guys, dude. I talked to them. Yeah, sure.
Dude, we launched them in 24 hours. We did 20 million in revenue.
Right.
The founder was like, man, I'm looking at my like Shopify or whatever he was using. And like I went to sleep and I woke up with like 10 million more dollars. Right. That was the height of that world.
Yeah.
So we were like, oh, cool, man. Let's just take all these clients. Let's build a brand around this thing. Okay. And we did it. The problem is when it's uncool, every VC was like, hey, I didn't send you that AI deal or that enterprise deal because you guys are the hardware guys. And I'm like, no. We do everything. Like, trust me. They're like, no. I would never even think about you for that anymore. And so we had a dry spell, Patrick, of like a couple of years where we were just not being considered because people thought we were all these hardware guys. So we would get the couple of hardware things that happened, but it went from like 100 companies to like 2, right? And
man,
I think
that's brutal.
Yeah, but the lesson learned for marketers is be careful how you position yourself. Yep. And there's a difference between position and pigeonholing, right?
Absolutely.
And, you see it nowadays. You saw it with, maybe mobile, right? Like, oh, we're the VC fund for mobile. Okay, well, what happens when everyone's mobile? Are you still the mobile VC fund, right?
Yeah.
So that's just sharing a point of like, it's a very tricky line. And I think the answer, by the way, is probably just to be disposable. Create a thing, blow it up, get the bag, delete the thing, do a new thing, versus being like a half-assed, like I do everything person. So I always kind of like debate this with marketing friends, which is, should we just be all in on this thing for a while and then just delete it? Or do we like need to be broad, but never really be remembered for anything? This is the big challenge I still face in our business is that, and even in our venture fund now, my partner and I were like, look, we're going to get a lot of AI stuff through the PR firm, But if we're going to go search companies that we can invest in early stage that are not too expensive and overlooked, let's look at this dirty jobs world, dirty, dusty, dangerous industries, industrial automation, blue collar jobs that we can empower. And so that's great. And that's actually finally working. We put these events on called Dirty Jobs conferences. We're getting inbounds from VCs saying, hey, this is for your thesis. That's great because we actually want to be pigeonholed for the fund, but I don't want my PR firm to be pigeonholed there. So these are like calculated risks, I would say.
And, and that all makes a lot of sense, right? I think that's always the problem, especially when an industry becomes hyper competitive. When an industry gets hyper competitive, as marketers, we're taught, okay, find a niche and own that niche so you can kind of stand out. And then the problem is if you overcommit to that niche or somehow that niche loses all sexiness and appeal, then you're stuck there. So that's a challenge, man. And tell me the other thing that I was interested, and then I think people might be interested is, at some point you had a, pretty successful, PR shop. At what point did you decide to kind of not pivot because you still do the PR stuff, but at what point did you decide to make the jump into investing? What did you have to do to overcome any fears of becoming an investor? What was that like?
So the way investing kind of started as an entrepreneur. I started my first startup out of college. It's called Philly Tonight. It's a nightlife website. I started with Nahal from ENIAC. And so I already knew about like the need to go raise money and all those things. When I started the PR firm, it was all really just retainer based. My first client was Nahal. Actually, he wanted me to do PR and I'm like, I'll try it. And that's kind of how VSC started. I was just like, do one thing, as an entrepreneur, just do one thing and get good at it. You have to do so many jobs and I was really bad at many, but I was just one thing. So he couldn't afford our retainer. So he gave us half stock, half cash. And that was the first time I was like, okay, so I'm going to take equity here, see if this works out. It did work out. The second one was AdMob. Omar called me up and he actually hit up Nahal and said, hey, I want you to invest, Nahal, because he was an early mobile guy and I need your PR guy. Right. And so I saw what AdMob was. I was like, holy shit, this is going to be big. Because I could tell it wasn't a marketing agency like Ipsh, the Halls company. It was an ad network. It was going to be like DoubleClick size. And I said, hey, man, I love this. I would love to do it. I want to put a check in. And he's like, sorry, man, Sequoia is blocking any new money. I was like, fuck. I was like, I don't know then. I don't know if I want to do this. Because like wherever I put my skills, I want to have an upside. Right.
Sure. Makes sense.
So Omar's like, listen, man, if you hit these insane media coverage goals, I think we had to get 100 stories in like 18 months. I'll give you the equity that you would have earned if you had put the check in. So we literally got him on the cover of the Wall Street Journal a month before the 18-month window and converted into shares. And so always respect Omar for that. That's how we hit it. That was our first big win. And Sequoia and Excel were in that. And it just led to us becoming a thing. So I guess the first part is like, I already started to understand the value of having some ownership. The second part is my wife and I started angel investing in companies throughout this run up in the last 15 years. And because of the success of some of those equity for service deals with PR clients and the success with angel investing into our friends' companies and I've LP'd in a bunch of funds, I was like, well, instead of putting 25K into this thing, I should have put 250K into this thing. Right. And so then we started thinking we should start a fund. I found a partner who was managing the fund completely. He's running it. He's sourcing deals. I find deals for the PR firm. And that is an extension of our brand now, where generally like my strategy is like, I want to be in every part of the web of Silicon Valley. I want to be the entrepreneur, a service provider to other entrepreneurs, a service provider to venture capitalists, an LP in venture capitalist funds, a GP in my own fund. The GP of my fund, all my LPs are other entrepreneurs and GPs. It's a web, right? And so I built it like that because only when you understand everybody around the table can you be really good at any one of those jobs, right?
Very true.
So that's what, like, I created this like web of Silicon Valley, and we hope that it's a flywheel effect. And we're not done yet. I have like every couple of years I add a new business line. So I can't talk about the that's coming because I'm still working on it. But I think I have the next piece of the puzzle, and that's going to be coming soon.
But I guess the question is more like when you consider adding a new business line, right? There's always an element of fear and uncertainty, right? Because it's new, it's something that's unproven. There's a risk there. How do you get over that fear when you feel that fear coming up? Like, oh my God, and is this going to work? Or am I putting too much money? Or what do I do if this fails? How do you manage that?
Well, the first thing I say is I want my first business to be really good always, because if I need to fall back, then it's okay. Like the best thing about Silicon Valley, I think, unlike the East Coast, man, and other cultures, is that it's actually a culture of like fast failure.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Right. And so I still want to be good at my core thing. And I've
Right.
designed the fund to still be very relevant to the core thing. I am the storyteller for the founders and my partners at the firm for these entrepreneurs we invest in. So it's still
Right.
the same value add. It is risky. How do you deal with it? I think initially you give it time to like blossom into its own thing. And then you start to really think about like planting KPIs on it that you run your other business like. And so I would say that the one thing I've learned is like use the process, you implement process that you can use across all businesses. And where I find like I'm struggling is just trying to create different cultures in different businesses. That's not like easy to do, and it's hard to code switch. But I would guess that Elon Musk's culture at SpaceX and Twitter and his businesses, Tesla, are similar cultures, right? So he doesn't have to change those. So I guess one thing I would like to guide entrepreneurs as you expand into new lines, implement the same process and KPIs and measure them all the time. And if they don't work, then, evolve them, tweak them, and eliminate them if they don't work, right?
Yeah.
So that's been our style. And I also try, like, if it's a new business, I try to get customer demand in advance before I do too much. Like I basically like do pre-sales. And if I don't get pre-sales demand for it, then maybe it's not good enough of an idea.
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. And look, I mean, we're coming up on the last segment of the show, and I didn't want to kind of close the show without touching on a deeply personal thing that you and I briefly touched upon when we last talked. And I think it'd be very interesting for some of the people in the audience who are not only founders or executives or midlife professionals navigating the messy middle of their careers, but when you think of navigating the messy middle of success, there is always a personal right to navigating that. Right, there's always the impact of the founder, the executive that's potentially successful at work, but struggling at home, dealing with issues around marriage, parenting, et cetera. We talked about our kids. I think you mentioned that you have a son that's either in college or going to college, or we talked about, kids in college. When you look at, what's happened over the last 10 years in terms of social media and the impact that's now been well documented on kids and teenagers, right? And we saw that in, that famous book, The Anxious Generation. Now you see AI and you see stories of teenage suicide, due to ChatGPT or whatever. What's your take on how do we go about preparing our kids for a world that has never been more unpredictable, probably, than it is today?
Yeah, I'd say one, take your kid to work. Like, I think maybe the pandemic or whatever, like, I think my kids listen to more Zooms than like Otter AI, right? Like, what does dad do for a living? Like, what's it like?
Here you go.
I took my son when he was 5 to a meeting with a founder in India, like into his office, into the meeting, because I was like, you know what? Like, I want you to see what my life is like. So that's not I want to demystify what work is, because I don't want you to be fearful of the future. I want you to know that, like, you'd be surprised how, like, the way we work is not that different than the way we live, right? And if you can take your kid to work first, they start to get comfortable to know I could do that, or I don't want to do that. Like, I now see what dad does. Like,
Dad's job is boring. I definitely don't want to do that.
Boring, yeah. And so I say, take your kid to work. One, second, take your kid to somebody else's work, right? One of your buddies, and see what that life is like. And I think that just makes people feel less nervous about what the future is going to be. Like, these jobs, like, how do you know what they are? You read about them or you see them on TikTok or some career table at a college. You don't know until you get in there. That's number one.
So true.
I think number two, like, encourage friendships and socialization. Like, if my daughters or son want to hang out with their friends, I'm like, go for it, right? Like, do it. Have them come over to our house. Like, you need to get off the screens and you need to go out and have fun together. And so I'm highly like encouraging of my kids to have fun, enjoy themselves, be out with their friends, take an Uber if they need to, right?
Yeah.
Because the screen is the biggest problem. And if you can
Yeah.
get off the screen, then you win.
So true.
Exercise, even in a hot tub, like you still bring your phone in, right? Or go on a hike,
Sure.
right? Or somewhere with no cell service. So all of those things are areas where I feel like the more time you have off screen as a teenager, chances
agree.
are the more happy you're going to be.
Totally agree with that. I mean, for us, it's been competitive sports. You know, my daughter plays field hockey, was a competitive gymnast. My son was a competitive basketball player for a while. And we found that just like keeping them busy with competitive sports was awesome because A, it's great to socialize. B, you learn to work collaboratively with people. C, you become more competitive. D, you get out and get some exercise. So I think that you know, getting them out of the house, getting them off screens is massive, right? But you know, the question obviously rears its ugly head because, you know, you and I went to college, right? I mean, I went to Georgetown. I think if I remember well, you went to Wharton, or to Penn. And, you know, in an age where like the inflation on education has become stratospheric, right? It is like literally, I was looking at the tuition of Georgetown. It's like fucking ridiculous, to be honest, right? And in an age where like we have all this transformation happening, where like entry level jobs potentially are going away, the natural question, man, is like, is college even still worth it?
You know, for certain jobs, it may not be, right? Some of the most in demand jobs don't require a college education. Two jobs. One is blue collar jobs, and two is like vibe coders, right? Who can start a business right now. I think there's value in college if you know what you're buying and what you get out of it. So for me, college was a lot about building my EQ. I didn't think that going in. It just,
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
naturally social person, but I spent more time hanging out with my friends and discussing different, you know, craft beers and listening to different music from around the world on the couch than I did maybe in the library. And I think it was like immensely valuable and I loved it. I think study abroad is a freaking glitch in terms of making your life amazingly thinking outside of America and seeing the world.
Yeah.
To those that can afford and do it, it was a game changer for my life to think about like taste and culture in a different way than like frat culture.
Yeah.
I think if people, so basically development of EQ,
Yeah.
development of learning from others and different cultures are huge. My son plays a sport in college, so he likes the camaraderie of that, the challenge, the physical exercise. I think, you know, just the need to be in the gym means you're going to be a little bit healthier. I think Greek life is important for those that are interested in it. I think it could provide a lot of meaningful conflict resolution at the worst and you know, camaraderie at the best. But like, you know, I met guys from so many different backgrounds, from socioeconomic, race, cities. I know what a Boston guy is versus like a Philly guy versus like a DC
Sure.
guy. Those things are actually helpful in business, man. You're trying to close it, like, oh, dude, are you a Redskins fan? Oh, I got this guy, you know, from DC, and you just get into it, and it's because you have some understanding of people's paths, and it's not transactional. Like being, you know, college buddies are also just like you're not all vying for something yet. You're just maybe enjoying. So I think if you invest in college for that, it's great. I think there's also some schools that are doing these, like, you know, these programs where they go back and forth off of campus into jobs.
Yeah. Sure.
I think Northeastern does it. And I also, Waterloo in Canada does it really well. And so that's huge. I heard that like the placement rates on jobs are like super high when you're able to go in for 6 months, work a job, then go back to college.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's a new model.
The employer knows what they're getting, right? They know they have a kid that, you know, knows something about the business, has some skills that can be valuable, can hit the ground running from day one, right? So I can see the value of that.
That's right. And then also you as the student can realize if you even like a career before you waste your time studying towards something you hate.
So key.
Right?
So key.
So I think the models have to change, right? Number one. Number two, they got to bring the cost down, right? And that probably,
so true.
You know, and that probably means that like they have to have less administrative overhead, right? Like with all due respect to the schools that I'm involved with and help, there's a lot of non-professor resources that are spent on, right? And some of them are very valuable, career advancement or trips to meet employers, amazing. Sometimes you look at these schools and like, well, man, they're putting a lot more money into like the stadium than they are into job placement. So
Bingo.
I don't know what they're prioritizing here.
Bingo.
Also, the economics of these schools are changing dramatically, Patrick, because of the Trump administration, cutting funding. The second big thing is now you're seeing private equity can buy into university sports programs.
That's crazy.
Crazy. Can you imagine your like Georgetown's basketball team being owned by BlackRock?
No, please. I don't think that's a good recipe for success. Yeah, I mean, it's like, but the other thing that it kind of like the other question that comes up, and then I think this is the last question before we move on to our final kind of lightning round questions. When you talk to kids, especially because of social media, right? When they're on Instagram and they live in this world where they think, it's all Bugattis and Ferraris and unicorns and you can, become a millionaire in a year. How do you manage those expectations for your kids? What do you tell a kid who doesn't know anything about the real world, maybe smart and hardworking, but what do you tell them about how to balance this idea of ambition, but meaning and working hard?
Yeah. So I credit my wife a lot to kind of resetting their understanding of the world and culture and what's real and not. This point on like get rich schemes, I think there's a lot of deprogramming required for young people to understand where real wealth is created. And it's a lot of basics, man. It's like investing, open a stock account, little compounding, put a couple bucks in every month type thing. I think that's actually becoming more popular on social media than when we were young. I didn't know what compounding was. Like we didn't know.
Neither. I had no clue.
So there's some positives of social media, I would say, that traditional media never did. But I think also what you find is also the same people that are tracking this guy that makes all this money in crypto. When there was a huge liquidation a month ago, that same guy goes out and tweets, I lost $2 billion, right? Like sometimes the consequences are also public, right? And
Very
it just takes time to see that what you thought is too good to be true ended up not being true anyway, right? Like, so I think that's one thing I kind of share with them is like, I show them I think what maybe I would call is like, you show them, you myth bust, right?
Right.
You myth bust with people and say, okay, this person that's doing that thing, if it was such a good thing, why were they telling everybody about it? Why wouldn't they just do it themselves? Right.
Yep.
I think about one of the funnier ones I think about is real estate investing. And I'm a real estate investor too, but like people calling it passive income. I'm like, you obviously have never managed a property. There's a fucking pipe that breaks, someone slips and breaks their back on your steps outside, flood, earthquake. Are you think that's passive? Like fucking joke. So sometimes
there's no passive income. Yeah.
There is no passive. Right. So like, I think that anything that's too good to be true, I try to teach them it isn't. And maybe because of, you know what it is? The two of us were marketers. We smell bullshit like fucking
we have the bullshit detector like on all the time.
We're the bullshit detector all the time. It's like, if you work at McDonald's, you're probably not eating a Big Mac every night, right? So we see it easier than
hopefully you're not.
I'm hoping. So I try to use that superpower in reverse, which is, hey man, just remember everyone on the internet is trying to sell you something, right? And then you have to choose. And also, by the way, look at the comments. Sometimes the comments are real. They're like, dude, this is bullshit for these reasons. You're like, oh God, that was a good point, right? So maybe there's a self-regulation that's happening a little bit with this stuff. But in the end of the day, you see people making, you know what it is? It's also the non-coastal cities. This is a big point, Patrick, around there's a lot of people that they feel left behind.
Yeah, I hear that.
Right. And
definitely hear that.
It's very hard to read a headline about OpenAI employees that have a $600 billion tender, or if you work at NVIDIA, everyone's worth $20 million. Like, how does that feel in West Virginia? Or, you see it on Instagram, or you live in Wyoming or Utah. So what do people do then? They're doing two things. One, crypto. Like, well, this coin went from a penny to $50. This guy now is a billionaire. Well, I could do that too. Well, I have a little bit of money. Let me slot machine it. The second thing is gambling apps, right? And they're being disguised as prediction markets. That's that's the greatest repositioning of 2025.
Oh my God, it's such a bullshit story, but yeah.
Gambling is predictions.
Yep.
Casino on your phone, right?
Yep.
But when you don't feel like you don't have a job at Google with getting stock options, or you're not working in Silicon Valley, these are what people think they have to resort to now to feel like they have a same lottery ticket type narrative. And how do we solve that? I think one thing I like that they did with Michael Dell and Gerstner is this Invest America program. Get kids money into their bank accounts when they're born and let them
smart.
compound and grow before it's too late, where they have to resort to these sad short-term tactics.
Yeah.
They should be building wealth over time. And the dollar amounts to start are very small, but how they grow is amazing, right? So some of this administration is doing good things. And again, that's Brad Gerstner and Michael Dell and these people. That's their solution to income inequality versus we're going to tax the billionaires, which is interesting.
Right.
Somebody else will solve it in a different way. And I would say that like, that's the thing about America now is it still is one of the best places to go from zero to something than anywhere else on the planet. You know, most countries, we talk about there's too many billionaires. Most countries have 7 families that run their country, right?
That's very true. I happen to be in one of them right now. Chile is just like that.
Yeah. So
it's like 5 families.
So it's like, okay, you don't like 1,000, you don't like 20,000 billionaires. You can go to a country where 7 of them run it, right? Yep. And by the way, those 7, they put all their personal money into OpenAI anyway, right? Like
exactly.
So I think this is still the best country to be successful.
Yeah.
But the question is, people need to feel like they're part of that narrative of hitting it big. And the answer, I think, is we have to give them the right resources early and then let it roll. No buying and selling. For me, I say, give every kid that money, put it in an index fund, right?
Yeah. And just keep it. Don't touch it, right? Just leave it there.
Touch it. Don't even look
at it. Add a little bit, add every month a little bit, you know, people don't realize the value of compounding over time.
It's crazy.
Right? And this is, it's nuts.
It's auto add. It's $5 if you can do it. Put it in. And it's
insane. And you know, in 10 years, you don't even know what you have. It makes a massive difference, right?
And you know what? I didn't know this stuff until guess what? TikTok. I'm almost 50, man. I was watching compounding videos on TikTok during the pandemic. And I'm like, holy shit, this is how it works. You could just like set it and forget it. Because the whole media landscape is buy this, sell that, sell NVIDIA, short.
Yeah, all the trading, exactly. Yeah. It's just like buy it and hold it. It's so much more productive.
Right. But financial media is designed because it's sponsored by trading companies.
Exactly.
To make you constantly buy and sell. That's not what you're supposed to really do. You're really supposed to set it and forget it and, you know, keep adding to it. So anyway, dude, nobody taught me that in school, right? Like they didn't teach me pen. They didn't teach me. Where did I learn it? I learned it on social media. One of the places where there's a lot of bad stuff, there's also good stuff.
There's also good stuff. All right, man. Well, listen, we're going to wrap up with our 3 lightning round questions. I always ask every guest on the show 3 quick questions, 3 quick answers. These are always kind of like quirky and fun. So curious to get your take on it. So the first lightning round question is, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I would wish I could sing.
Okay. Yeah, I do too. I can't sing to save my life, man. All right. Second question. I'm really interested in your answer on this one. If you could have dinner with anyone in history, alive or dead, who would it be?
My grandparents.
Okay. Interesting.
I want to know their
stories. Meant a lot to you.
Yeah.
And lastly, what's your definition of success?
Happiness.
All right, Vijay. Vijay, look, man, big thanks for showing up today, going deep, pulling no punches, sharing your stories, you know, talking about everything from AI to kids to storytelling, the stuff that you've done, you know, with VSC Consulting, with VSC Ventures, and you've done some amazing things over the years, helped a lot of people articulate stories who really struggled, been part of some tremendous successes in the Valley, continue to add a lot of value to a lot of founders, to a lot of investors, obviously, you know, and it's been amazing to reconnect with you after so many years. So for those of you guys who are interested and want to know more about Vijay, you know, you can follow him at Vijay Chattha. Check out VSC Ventures. I'm sure you're on, what's your Instagram?
Well, it's probably Vijay Chattha on those things. VSC.
Sounds good.
VSC PR.
Sounds good. And look, obviously, guys, if you like this episode, make sure that you drop us a review, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, share, comment, and like if this is helpful. If you know people who are, you know, who have a bunch of these questions, whether it's around AI or startups or storytelling, make sure you send them a link to this episode. It's been awesome having you on the show, Vijay. Thanks again for being here, man. Really cool to reconnect. And for the rest of you folks out there, you know, enjoy the episode. See you on the next episode. Wish you all the best and happy holidays, and we will catch you in the next one.